What's up, guys? Andre here, and I'm joined by Ash Paulson because we're here to answer your questions about Yooka-Laylee. More so Ash than me because he's been playing the game a lot more than I have. So Ash, I guess real quick, how much time have you spent with this game so far?
So I think my in-game clock reads at around 25 hours. I've more or less gotten through the first 3 worlds. I still have the last 2 worlds to go. But yeah, I've just been trying to take my time while also, trying to really get through the game in time for the review. So I think I've seen a little more than half, a bit more than half of it. I'm not necessarily going for 100% for the review, obviously. I'm just really trying to finish the game proper, but I'll probably go back and do 100% later on. But yeah, so I've been spending quite a bit of time with the game. And to be clear, the Xbox One version of the game. So I believe you and Derek have Steam versions, right?
Correct,
You have
yeah.
Steam keys, and then I got an Xbox One code. So that'll come into play later with certain questions, but I just wanted to make it clear, I am playing on Xbox One.
Well, it's a good thing I'm here then, so we can address those Steam and Xbox question or differences.
Exactly.
So I guess before we hop in real quick, we should mention that we are only able to answer questions specifically up to World 2, I believe. Is that right?
World 2 unexpanded. So that's why when I put out the call for questions, I was like, try to keep your questions as general as possible, because in terms of the actual content of the game, we can't talk about anything beyond the unexpanded World 2.
Alright, well let's go and dive on in here. So first up we have one from JJ Luigi who asks, is the game designed in a similar structure like Banjo-Kazooie, or does it take a different approach?
It takes a somewhat different approach. The skeleton of Banjo-Kazooie is definitely there, but this is definitely more of an open world take on the 3D platformer, so the worlds are bigger, you can expand them so that they become even bigger than that, and I would say even in their unexpanded forms, though, they're already quite a bit bigger than the general Banjo-Kazooie world. So it's the skeleton's the same, but it's more open world than Banjo-Kazooie was. And I would say the hub actually feels fairly similar in size to Gruntilda's lair. I don't know how big it actually compares, but the hub feels somewhat similar to Gruntilda's lair, but the worlds themselves that splinter off from that are much larger and much more open-ended than in Banjo-Kazooie.
Would you say they're closer in size to Banjo-Tooie?
Yeah, I would say they're a little closer in size to that. Obviously, I would say the expanded versions of the Yooka-Laylee worlds are definitely bigger than Banjo-Tooie, but I would say the unexpanded forms of the world are somewhat similar. You're closer in targeting it when you're thinking about Banjo-Tooie.
Okay. Next up, Gregster asks, how do Yooka and Laylee compare to their original counterparts, being Banjo and Kazooie?
They're generally not that different, to be honest. I mean, Yooka is smarter and more proactive than Banjo. I'll definitely say that. Yooka's definitely more of a go-get-em. Yeah, his heart's in the right place like Banjo. He's less lazy about it. So he's just a good guy. Laylee is one-for-one Kazooie. She's just exactly the same character. I just don't think Laylee looks as cool, but in terms of personality, they're exactly the same character.
Alright, Brock Productions asks, how does the adventurous aspects of the game compare to Banjo-Kazooie and Banjo-Tooie?
I would say they're pretty on point. I mean, there's a lot to explore here. There's a lot of game here. There's a lot of world to explore here, and even within each world, there are tons of different sub-areas that you can explore within each world that usually reward you with a pagey when you do whatever challenges they have or explore them. So there's a lot to see here. I would say the adventurous aspect is completely on point.
All right. Lumian asks, are there more than one instance of jokes similar to God of Or? So I'm guessing he means more video game references, perhaps, or
Yes, 100%. I obviously won't spoil anything, but definitely, especially if you're a Banjo-Kazooie fan, keep an eye out for the cutscene you get when you expand World 2. It's pretty fantastic.
All right. The next question, I don't know how specifically we can answer this yet because it's not review time, but I'll ask anyway. Is Yooka-Laylee a worthy successor to Banjo-Kazooie? And this is from I Like Video Games.
Yeah, so this is obviously getting quite a bit into review territory, so I can't answer this specifically, but I would say that Yooka-Laylee absolutely does recapture the spirit of Banjo-Kazooie. If you're looking for a game that feels and gives off that vibe of Banjo-Kazooie, Yooka-Laylee absolutely does succeed in that.
Man, you're talking about it having the skeleton of Banjo-Kazooie and the spirit now? Is Yooka-Laylee a body snatcher?
I guess so, yeah. Face off here.
Oh man.
Yeah.
Swack999 asks, just how aware of previous Rare games is Yooka-Laylee?
I don't know about previous, like, the entire Rare catalog, but in terms of specific previous Rare games, and in terms of specifically the one this game is based on, it's absolutely aware of it. But I can't comment yet on the wider Rare catalog, but I've really only seen references to Banjo-Kazooie so far.
So you have seen pretty explicit references to that game?
Totally.
Okay, nice. I haven't come across that yet, so looking forward to that.
Yeah.
Alright, Wild Mushroom Man asks, did Breath of the Wild change your opinion on Yooka-Laylee at all? Breath of the Wild has several game genres in one, including platforming.
No, Breath of the Wild has not influenced my opinion on Yooka-Laylee whatsoever. It's a completely different game with a completely different purpose and goes for a different audience, so the two don't affect my opinion of the other game at all.
LSConda5 asks, do the levels have lots to do, or are they big but empty?
I would say that the answer for that lies somewhere in the middle. They are big, and they do feel slightly empty sometimes, but they also have a lot to do. So, it really is kind of a little bit of both. I would say that sometimes when traversing levels, they feel a little empty, and I kind of wish I wish I could get from point A to point B slightly faster, but it's never a deal breaker, and there's lots to do in every level. Like, let me make that clear. There's a lot to do here.
Would you say it's similar to Banjo-Tooie, which, I mean, it kind of sounds like you're describing Banjo-Tooie again, almost.
It's hard to say. I mean, I feel like I have been playing for 25 hours, and I still haven't 100%ed a single level. Like, I still have around 7 or 8 pages at least to go in each level. Mm-hmm. Each level has 25 pages, and I've gotten anywhere from like 15 to 20 in each level. So I feel like, and not all those are things that I just gave up on. Like, only a few of those are pages I found and then just went back, or put off till later. Like, some of those I don't even know where you get them. Okay. So I would say there's still stuff in these worlds that I haven't done, and it's hard to do a direct comparison to Banjo-Tooie. But in terms of the world size to things to do ratio, I would say you're definitely looking at something closer to Tooie than Kazooie. But like I said, there's still stuff in each world I haven't done, so there's a lot to do here.
Game Prime asks, how long did it take to complete one level? And I guess you said you can't fully answer that yet.
I mean, like, I want to say after expanding Tribal Stack Tropics, which is the first level, and getting, I would say, 70 to 80% of the stuff in that level, I was playing for about 8 hours. I think that's about right.
Oh, wow. Yeah, so quite a bit to do.
But I also think maybe I was, some of that was spent gathering footage. Some of that, I wouldn't say that's a direct one-to-one comparison. I think I'm probably lagging a little bit behind what most people would be doing because I've been exploring a little bit and taking my time a little bit. So, keep that in mind.
Amir asks, as a person who has never played Banjo-Kazooie and the like, would you still recommend Yooka-Laylee?
That's, again, getting kind of into review territory, but I mean, 3D platformers are fun, in my opinion. You just have to ask yourself, are you in the mood for the kind of 3D platformer that Banjo-Kazooie is? If you've never played it, I would encourage you maybe to look up a few videos of it and see what you think, because it is a very specific vibe that Yooka-Laylee is going for here. And if you weren't around for that, you might want to see if that's your thing. You got lots of googly eyes, lots of really happy music, lots of goofiness and weird British humor in general. So it is a very specific vibe that this game goes for, and it couldn't hurt maybe to look up some Banjo-Kazooie footage and see if you think this is for you.
I'm not sure who this one is from, but they ask...
Oh, my bad.
Despite Yooka-Laylee being a spiritual successor to Banjo-Kazooie, does the game feel unique and different?
That's such a hard question. I mean, that's such a broad question, but yes and no. I mean, it very much is trying to be a new Banjo-Kazooie, in my opinion. I don't know how different it feels from that. I would say it absolutely specifically is going for that vibe, but I don't necessarily think that Banjo-Kazooie invalidates Yooka-Laylee either, just because it's so similar. But I would say it's not going for a unique vibe all that much. It's really going to recapture that banjo vibe.
I mean, we already know it has its skeleton and spirit, so...
Exactly, yeah.
Martin the Moogle asks, can we turn off the voice acting? Those little grunts like the characters make can get pretty annoying.
If I remember correctly, you can't specifically turn off the voice acting, but the voice acting is tied to the sound effects. So I believe you can turn down the music and sound effects separately, like you can in a lot of games. But if you turn down the sound effects, that'll affect the voices as well.
It should be mentioned, though, that you actually, if you just keep pressing A, you can skip most of the dialogue.
That's true, too.
It'll skip right to the end of the line, and you'll skip pretty much all the voices in that line. So you effectively can mute it if you just keep tapping A.
But the voices are awesome. Why would you do that?
Right? I know. That was a key part of Banjo-Kazooie. Why do you want to take that away? Yeah. Jennifer asks, are there any other indie cameos like Shovel Knight?
Not that I have seen so far.
Okay. Sam Owen asks, any word on a release date for the Switch? Thanks.
Nope, they haven't said anything about the Switch version yet, or at least not in terms of the Xbox One and PS4 codes they've been sending out.
Yeah, I think the most recent word I saw was them just saying they're trying to get it on there as quickly as possible, but it's a pretty standard response. So it's coming, we just don't know when.
Exactly.
Dark Throwback asks, if you fought any bosses yet, how would you what would you compare them to most, Banjo-Tooie or Banjo-Kazooie?
Oh, man, I can't remember offhand how the two games' bosses differ. But I would say that the boss fights, they're more sectioned off. They're definitely not... Well, it's kind of hard to explain. They have their own names and titles, and their fights that are sectioned off from the rest of the level, but you also are able to almost stumble into them by accident. They don't necessarily come at the culmination of something either. So hopefully that answers your question, but their boss fights are almost treated as another challenge that you can find within a level, more than they are the culmination of the level itself, if that makes sense.
That sounds, I'm having trouble remembering a whole bunch of bosses from Tooie, but that sounds like
Me too.
Mostly how they were handled. Yeah, Tooie, you mean.
Does sound like that's how they were handled in Tooie, though, if I remember correctly.
I felt like that's definitely how they were handled in Kazooie, I feel
okay.
like.
Maybe, okay.
Although, I'm actually drawing a blank trying to, think of bosses specifically, too.
Me too, I'm glad it's not just me, I kind of am.
I think that kind of answers our question right there. They don't usually come at the culmination of something, you just kind of stumble upon them. The one I'm remembering, doesn't feel like that big of a boss in hindsight, is in Rusty Bucket Bay. You come across a giant wooden box in the crate, and it turns into smaller boxes when you attack it.
Yeah, so in that sense, I feel like didn't Banjo-Tooie was the one that had really named bosses, arenas for the boss fight specifically.
Yeah, it did have that giant inflatable balloon guy in the surface level.
That's what I was thinking. Okay, I think that's what I was referencing earlier in the answer. So in that sense, I would say they're closer to Tooie because these bosses do have their own arenas, they have their own names, their own titles.
Okay.
But at the same time, they don't come at the end of the level necessarily. They're just, you can stumble upon them when looking for other pages.
Right. I mean, these levels are largely open in the order you go about things, so that makes sense.
Yeah.
From MCN Mike, they ask, do you wish Shovel Knight did more in the game than just tell you to get a ruby from the top of the mountain?
No, I mean, I think it's cool. This isn't Shovel Knight's game at the end of the day. This is Yooka-Laylee. I think it's cool that he had a cameo, but I don't think he needed necessarily to take center stage.
Mm-hmm. Makes sense. Parallel Loaded asks, in Banjo-Tooie and Donkey Kong 64, levels often became hard to navigate because everything looked the same. Is navigation better here?
I would say navigation's pretty good here. I mean, yeah, I never really had a problem, or at least I haven't had a problem so far, remembering where specific things are in levels. So, yeah, I don't think really that there's a problem here where everything looks the same or you get lost because everything looks too similar. No, I haven't had that problem yet.
I will chime in a little bit here. I will say I have had that problem with Tribal Tropics, is it?
Oh, have you? Tribal Stack Tropics.
Stack Tropics, yeah. I haven't played the game nearly as much as you, so I'm sure part of it is just not learning the level as much. But yeah,
Sure.
A lot of that level looks very similar to me. I have no idea where that thing was I'm looking for, so...
Right. I mean, I guess I would say of all the levels I've played so far, that might be the one where it's the most problematic, but I still personally haven't really been getting lost or anything.
Okay. LOZ Jam asks, once you collect all the quills and pages in the world, is there anything left to do in that world?
I have not personally 100% of the world yet, so I can't say. However, there isn't just quills and pages to collect. Every world also has a health extender and a stamina extender, and there are also, well, I guess you have these Genjo stand-ins called Ghost Riders, but they're tied to a pagey, so that wouldn't count. Yeah, but I would say you still have a hidden health extender and a hidden stamina extender in each world to find, even if you've already found all the quills and pages. Okay.
Steven asks, do you think there will be amiibo use in Yooka-Laylee?
That's a good question. I don't think there will be a Yooka-Laylee amiibo, but maybe, that would be one kind of cool thing they could hold back for the Switch version, since it seems to be taking a while to make.
Yeah, that's
so
true.
Hopefully they do it. It'd be a nice bone to throw to Nintendo fans for having to wait so long.
Right. Hayden asks, how do the controls feel when rolling? Tight, clunky? It looks like it might be a bit hard to control.
I can see why you'd think that, Hayden, but no, actually, while they do feel a little loose, they feel loose in a realistic sense, like you're rolling around, like you have the traction you actually would if you were rolling around like that. So no, I think rolling feels great, and you can actually turn more on a dime by jumping, too. So you always have the option to jump if you need to turn a little more quickly, but no, I think rolling feels great, and it doesn't feel at all bad or clunky to me at all.
Jake Mueller asks, is Yooka-Laylee hard?
I wouldn't say on the whole it's super difficult, but there's some challenging aspects here for sure. The game doesn't just hand you every pagey, and there I've come across at least one pagey where I'm not sure if it's something I'm missing, but it seems unreasonably difficult to get, and so I'm not sure if I'm missing something. But beyond that one pagey that's really hard, I would say there have been some challenging ones, but the difficulty is pretty fair.
Okay. Luigi the Smash King asks, does it run at 60 frames per second or 30 frames per second? And if so, how well does it maintain that frame rate?
This is the big one. I'm so glad you asked this, Luigi. Okay, so at my preview event when I played this, I was playing on clearly a very optimized Steam build, or PC build, and it was great. I said it ran at 60 frames per second, no stuttering, and that's all true. Unfortunately, on the Xbox One, it is a different story. Not only are we talking about 30 frames per second, it is a hard 30 frames, but there are frame drops and stuttering everywhere. Like, I want to make it clear, this game was not optimized for consoles, or at least not Xbox One. I haven't played it on PS4, obviously haven't played it on Switch, but Xbox One, 30 frames, lots of stuttering, and I think you've seen that too, Andre.
Yeah, so I'm playing on Steam,
right,
or on
right.
PC rather, and it does seem to mostly run at 60 frames per second. But I am getting some slowdown too. But again, that's going to depend a lot on your build. My computer is like 3.5 years old, and I got a pretty good graphics card at the time. But graphics cards are quickly outdated in this industry. But yeah, so my computer handles it mostly fine, but there is some occasional slowdown. But yeah, it does hit 60 frames per second as opposed to your 30. So.
Yeah, and like my guess would be that PS4 and Switch are also going to run at 30, and it seems like it's going to be that a 30 on console, and I believe I've heard that Playtonic are not working on a PS4 Pro patch, so Pro owners apparently are not going to get better performance. So there you go, but console you're looking at 30 frames.
Nothing Just Go asks, when's the review?
I believe it's April 4th is the embargo, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Andre, yeah, April 4th. I believe 8 a.m., so early in the morning.
Yeah, Pacific time, right?
Pacific time, yeah.
All right, Colton asks, does Yooka-Laylee bring back the nostalgia?
100%. Yes, it does.
All right. Bass Forever asks, do Worlds 1 and 2 get multiple expansions or just one per world?
One per world so far.
Okay. Raxacorian asks, is Wario a playable character?
I just thought this was funny. No, Wario is not a playable character, but thanks for the question.
That's been so good.
Yeah.
An anonymous worm, a anonymous worm, should be an anonymous worm asks,
right?
I've never played Banjo-Kazooie. Should I play it first before playing Yooka-Laylee?
No, I mean, it helps to have, it's cool to have a bit of a touchstone for some of the references in this game and the overall style, but no, there's no reason that you have to play Banjo-Kazooie before Yooka-Laylee. Like, there's no prerequisite here, and that one doesn't take place after the other. I mean, it's cool to have that callback, but no, you can jump right into Yooka-Laylee and have a good time.
Jordan asks, in terms of level design, is it more focused like Kazooie or more open and non-linear like Tooie?
More open and non-linear like Tooie, absolutely.
Have you found, actually, building off of that, Tooie actually did a few interesting things where it would have some interconnections between levels, like you need something from one world in another. Have you seen anything like that in Yooka-Laylee?
I have not. There are warps within the hub, the Ivory Towers hub area, where you can go from like the early hub area to a later hub area instantly. But no, in terms of warping between worlds, I have not seen anything like that yet.
Okay. Gus Chicas asks, how would you compare the range of abilities to Banjo-Tooie?
I haven't learned all the moves yet, but so far I would say probably Banjo and Kazooie have a more, I guess. It's so hard since it's been a while since I played Banjo-Tooie. I feel like Banjo-Tooie, they had a lot of moves in that game.
Well, because it had all the moves on the first one, then they added more on top of it.
Right.
Yeah.
So I feel like they almost had too many in Banjo-Tooie. And in that sense, I would say it's looking like Yooka-Laylee is going to have a narrower range of moves, but there's still you can still do quite a few different things in this game. Like, I haven't even learned all the moves yet, and I'm already have quite a few actions I can do. So probably not quite as large a breadth of moves as Tooie, but still pretty sizable.
All right. I think Alfed asks, could you even tell who John Chalmers is playing? I didn't know he was in the game until this hullabaloo.
Yeah, no, I don't even know if I've run into JonTron. I'm sure he's probably still in my version of the game since they're patching him out, but even if I've run into him, I wouldn't know who he did or what his voice sounded like.
Okay. Thomas Lynch asks, which world do you like more, World 1 or World 2?
Thematically, I would say I like World 2 more because I really love ice worlds and snow levels in general. However, in terms of layout and overall, just overall design, I would say I like the first world more.
Okay. Amy Campbell asks, as someone who never got to experience Banjo and Kazooie as a kid, is Yooka-Laylee a good spiritual successor?
Okay, we answered something similar to this before, but yeah, in terms of capturing the spirit of and the essence of Banjo-Kazooie,
And the
skeleton, yeah. It definitely captures the Banjo-Kazooie vibe and really hits that nostalgia center for sure.
Bread for Breakfast asks, how does level progression work? Are there different worlds, etc.?
There are 5 different worlds in the game, including there's also the hub world that connects those 5 different worlds. And generally, it's a little more open-ended than in Banjo-Kazooie, so you can go to World 1, or you find the entrance to World 1, and you can go collect, some pages and some quills there, and then you can actually just move on to World 2 if you want, or you can expand World 1 and make it bigger, thereby unlocking more challenges and more pages to find and more quills to find in that world. So you can really mix and match. You can you can expand a world, or you can go ahead and move on to another world, expand that world, and come back and expand the first world. Really, it's kind of up to you.
Satomi Famicom asks, does the fact that the game have multiple composers make the soundtrack feel less consistent? Kirkhope and Wise are great, but different.
That's a great question, and it's a good point. As far as I understand it, David Wise really mainly did the music for things like minigames and the minecart sequences and things like that. And I will say that the music for those things feels much different than the music Grant Kirkhope did for the main soundtrack. So, yeah, actually, there is kind of a feeling of inconsistency in the soundtrack in that sense. I wouldn't say it's a big deal, because the minigames and minecart stuff, that doesn't pop up super often, but it's often enough that you'll notice it, like, oh, wow, this minecart music is completely different, and you can totally tell that it has David Wise's signature style as opposed to Kirkhope, who does the rest of the soundtrack.
Patrick Merkley asks, why does Playtonic feel the need to keep screwing over their Nintendo fans?
I don't quite know what you mean. I can only assume that you mean that the Switch version is the last one to come out, and all I can say...
Well, that and the cancellation of the Wii U.
Well, that's true, I guess, yeah. I mean, all I can say about that is... what would you have done in their shoes? Just because the Wii U is it's a failed console, they would have spent money on this Wii U version for it to sell to only people who specifically wanted the Wii U version still, which aren't that many. So I hear what you're saying, and it sucks because this is the kind of game that I personally would want to play on a Nintendo console too, but I feel like, honestly, their hands were tied here, and I don't think it was done out of maliciousness to Nintendo fans.
Bob asks, is there any leveling up and upgrading in this game?
Yeah, so obviously, I hesitate to use the term level up because it's not an RPG, but yeah, there are health extenders and stamina extenders you can find which permanently increase your health meter and your stamina meter. So, that you can power up over the course of the game for sure.
Link asks, does Yooka-Laylee do enough to differentiate itself from other 3D platformers? my answer is, what other 3D platformers?
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of what I was going to say, is really there aren't that many other than, like, the Mario games, right? Yeah. So, I mean... honestly, yes, because just by virtue of the fact that there aren't that many others out there. Now, if you were to ask, does it do enough to differentiate itself from Banjo-Kazooie, I might say no, but at the same time, I'm not sure I'd have a problem with that, just because there are no other games like Banjo-Kazooie except Banjo-Tooie. So, yeah, I mean, it doesn't, but at the same time, I'm fine with that.
Michael Hendricks asks, do you feel like the controls and camera are tight, meaning it doesn't feel slippery or floaty and the camera doesn't freak out on you?
So this is 2 very different answers. The controls, yes, I generally like the controls a lot. The camera is a nightmare. Like, the camera really... I thought it was fine in my kind of 2-hour chunk of the game I played earlier on, but no, now that I've been playing the full game, the camera does all manner of things. It really is like it walked right out of the N64 era. I mean, it gets caught up on things, it freaks out sometimes, you'll get sudden changes in perspective that can cause your controls to, go awry for a second. So, the camera definitely works, but it has some problems. Absolutely.
Yeah, they're just trying to fully capture the 90s spirit, right?
and you also have kind of found that too, right?
Yeah, totally. So, yeah, that's for sure. The Cartoon Gamer asks, "Hey guys, without spoiling anything, what do you think of Yooka's soundtrack?"
At first, if you saw my preview, I wasn't feeling it. It definitely takes... It's a different style than you've seen in Banjo-Kazooie, right? So, it's grown on me. Kurt Cope's definitely going for a more kind of film score-esque ambient approach here, instead of having the melody kind of take center stage as its own character like in the Banjo games. And I personally was looking forward to that style again, so I think that's why I was initially disappointed. But now that I've had a chance to kind of get used to it, I actually am enjoying the soundtrack a lot. And I'm enjoying Kurt Cope's kind of different approach here. It's not as good as the Banjo soundtrack straight up, but it's still a very good soundtrack, and I'm really enjoying it.
Trenton Chick asks, "How does the animation hold up?"
The animation's great. I mean, I feel like Yooka and Laylee both have their kind of cool little personalities, and of course, if you leave them alone for a while, their idle animations will start, and just like Banjo and Kazooie, Laylee will mess with Yooka and, try to cover his eyes, or just mess with him a little bit, and then I just found this out yesterday. I was playing, messing around in the game.
The control pad?
The D-pad. Yeah. They map different actions to the D-pad, like taunting in Smash Brothers, and they're so cute. Like, I love their little animations. So I guess you just discovered that too, then. Yeah,
a couple days ago. That should be a video.
That's true, actually. Yeah. It should be.
All right.
But yeah, anyway, I would say the animations are totally on point. Yeah.
I like the one where when you fall from a high height and
yes,
Yooka or Laylee picks up Yooka.
Yeah, it's so good because he's just like sprawled on the ground and she kind of just gently lifts him up. I love that.
That's pretty great. So I think that's it. That's about roughly 50 questions or so. I think I trimmed a few as we were going through it. But yeah. So we answered, hopefully we answered most of the questions you guys had about the game. Ash, do you have any final thoughts you want to leave people with before your review goes up in about a week or so?
Yeah, I would just say that I am having a good time with the game. Like, if you are a fan of Banjo-Kazooie and Banjo-Tooie that's looking for a game that, kind of reminds you of those games, Yooka-Laylee absolutely does recapture that sense of Banjo and what that whole game, what those games are about and how they sound, how they look. It absolutely captures that. If you haven't played Banjo before, I'm having a good time, so I don't think you necessarily need, that touchstone to play it, but it's a fun game in general, and I'm looking forward to kind of sharing how I feel about it in the full review.
All right, sounds good. So stay tuned for that, guys. And of course, make sure to stay tuned to GameXplain for lots more on Yooka-Laylee and other things gaming as well. Catch you later. Bye.